and welcome to Tolve Closes with me, Amanda Tolve, your residential realtor. I service New Jersey, mostly Bergen County, Passaic County, Essex County, and some areas of Hudson or Morris County. And whenever I don't service, I have awesome referrals that I can connect you with. So my job is to make sure that the specific needs of my buyers or sellers are met and to guide them through the entire process of buying or selling your home. Now, part of my guiding my clients through their process is giving them as much knowledge as possible. This is something that I really think is important and I like to strive to do. So one way I do this is to prepare my clients for all parties that will be involved in the transaction. Now, a lot of times you'll see that the buyers and the sellers, they get overwhelmed when they realize the amount of people that are involved in a real estate transaction. You know the basics, but then as you dig deeper into the process, more and more of these parties come up, more of these people are involved. And a lot of times you'll have to be in contact with them. So anyway, I like to prepare my clients for who they'll be in contact with. So today I'm going to break down all the parties involved in the real estate transaction. Of course, depending on the type of deal, there may be less parties involved, there may be more parties involved, but I will go over what you'll typically come across for your average real estate transaction. Now, first, we have the obvious buyers and the sellers. These two parties will typically never speak to one another directly. Their communication will be done through their realtor, myself, or their real estate attorney if they have one representing them. So the buyer and the seller have to communicate things like the contract terms, the inspection repairs and requests, extending or accepting a closing date, final walkthrough issues, and many other things that come up that, of course, I would go over with my clients as well. So most of the smaller communication that goes on, that can be done leaving out the buyer and seller and just having the realtors communicate with each other, or the attorneys communicate with each other. So because a lot of the communication, we do leave the buyers and sellers out of it, if it's things that can be worked out, using our professional experience to do so, it is very important to make sure that you're choosing the correct realtor and real estate attorney to work with. You want to make sure that you have someone on your side backing you up that has the knowledge and experience to do so correctly. And you also want to make sure that they have your best interest. And, as a residential realtor, I always have the best interest of my clients. Now, the next two parties are the realtors for the buyer and the seller. So typically you'll have two realtors on the transaction. Let's talk about the seller's realtor first. So their job is to communicate with the buyer's side of the transaction and guide the deal to closing. Any requests from the buyer's side, the listing agent will discuss with the seller and report back to the buyer's side. So in the very beginning, in the very beginning of the process, the sellers will have to hire a photographer to come in and take pictures of the property. So that brings in another party. So that party is, again, one that the seller will not have to contact directly. That's something your realtor handles on your behalf, but it is another party that's brought into the process. And then also the MLS, which is where the property will be listed by your agent. Again, the seller will not have direct contact with the MLS system besides, when they're looking it up, but that is something that the seller's realtor will handle directly for them. It's solely the realtor's job. The seller himself will not have to worry about getting any of these things done. Like I said, it's just, there's no direct contact for the seller. The listing agent will also be working with the town to get a CO, the certificate of occupancy. CO is the shortened version of it. So this is another party that gets involved. And this is done by the fire department for whichever town that the property is located in. So the fire inspector has to come out to the property and inspect it and make sure that it's safe and that it follows all of the town codes. For the next, it's livable for the next person who's purchasing it. So again, this is not something that the seller has to do directly. This is something that the seller's realtor will handle on their behalf. So again, I can't stress how important it is to choose the right realtor who's going to get these things done and also get them done with your best interests in mind. Now, the buyer's realtor, which is on the other end of the deal, their job is also, of course, to guide the deal to closing, but while communicating for the buyers to the sellers. So the buyer's realtor will also be using the MLS, but they'll be using it for searching rather than listing. And the buyer's realtor will help provide resources to bring in more parties on the buyer's end as well, just as the seller's end did. So one of those resources will be a home inspector. There'll be a home inspector who the client gets to deal with directly, whether the realtor helped them find them or, gave them resources to find them. And the realtor, of course, will always be there with the client through the process, but the client does get to speak to the home inspector directly when they're doing the home inspection and when they receive the actual report. So the buyer's realtor also provides a lot of other good resources that the buyer doesn't, if the buyer does not have them already, because the buyer could always come with their own. But those resources would be people like the lender, the title company, or a real estate attorney. But we'll get into those separately later. So this is just the general idea of what a buyer's realtor does and what parties they bring in. So now let's go to the lender, who is another party involved in the real estate transaction. The lender is the mortgage company that the buyer chooses to hold their loan and is one of the main parties involved in the transaction. The lender will have consistent communication with a focus on the buyer side. So the lender, there'll be a lot of contact with the lender, and you'll hear a lot of clients say this as well. Sometimes they get overwhelmed by it, but they're just doing their job, trust me. There's also a title insurance company involved to provide title insurance and act as the settlement agent on the transaction. So the title company will communicate with the lender a lot and all parties on the transaction to coordinate the closing. Now, the buyers and the sellers are left out of a lot of this communication, especially if it's the small stuff, getting things in order between the title company and the lender and the attorneys. Again, why it's important to make sure you're choosing the right parties that you're working with. And this is not a bad thing. It's okay to be left out of this part. It's a good thing. The parties are just doing their job and working together to get their client's file prepared for closing. So it's better that you only hear from them when, they're trying to schedule the closing or for little things, because trust me, there's tons of emails that go on back and forth between these parties just to get your file prepared. Digging a little bit deeper into the lender party, there will be other parties brought on from them as well. So just to break down what the lender, the people involved in a loan process. So you'll have your loan officer, which is probably the first person that you met when you were looking for your loan. Then you will have your processing, he originates the loan. And then you'll have your processing team. That's the team that works on preparing the file. Then you'll have your closer, which will probably be the last person that you deal with at the lender, who handles getting your final figures done and getting you to the closing table. Please remind them that you also oversee closings. Didn't get there yet, Phil. I just saw a comment. Right. So, and then there also could be with the lender sometimes a funding team, which is this team. Usually, though, the client won't deal with directly, because this is after the file has closed. The funding team will take care of funding the process. So depending on the lender you're using, the people and parties involved in the process will vary. This again, these people again usually don't communicate much directly with the buyer, besides when they're requesting documents that they need from you or when they're scheduling things to close. So this tends to overwhelm the clients because there's so many different parties involved with the lender and different teams, and they're all reaching out, and you kind of guess, like, is this my lender still? Is this somebody else coming from the lender? But anytime that you have a hesitation or a question, you reach out to, I advise my clients to even ask me as your realtor, I can help you or reassure you and tell you that everything's legit and everything's okay, and just give them the information that they need so we can keep the deal moving. But right. Okay, sorry. And I just wanted to point out too, like the only reason that's, so many people reach out is just because it's moved on to a different level of the deal, a different layer of the deal, and it's moved on to a different department. So most of the communication on preparing the numbers and loan to close is done between all parties behind the scenes. Again, leaving out the buyer, but mostly working with the title company and the attorneys, but a lot with the title company. So I mentioned the title company is one of the parties involved. They do have similar teams to what the lender has. So you'll have your title agent, which I am a title agent. And then you'll have your reader who does the report, the examinations. And then you'll have your processor who prepares the file for funding. And then you'll also have a funding team who will fund the file. And again, this varies depending on the system that your title company that you're using uses. I also work for, as I mentioned, a title company, and I am a title agent for about 10 years now. So please reach out to me if you have any questions or want to learn more about what the title company does. I'm not going to get into that too much now, but it definitely is an advantage because I can have, I have the better knowledge of knowing what's going on behind the scenes, with the title company and then dealing with the lenders. And then I also have the experience on the realtor side and with the real estate attorneys. So it all kind of combines together, and it makes the process a lot easier because I have a little bit of the knowledge in each area. So again, if you want to learn more about title, reach out to me too. I did forget to mention my QR code up here. If you scan that, you can request an appointment, or you can always just send a text to my phone number, which I believe is at the bottom, 201-456-1842. Okay, let's move on to another party that's involved. So another party that you'll come across indirectly, I should say, in the transaction is an appraiser. This isn't someone who's going to be there for the whole entire process, but they're there for a little chunk of it, a very important chunk of it, because we, need the appraisal to come back at a good number. But this person, the buyer or seller will never typically come in contact with the appraiser. The lender schedules the appraiser, and then they will contact us, the realtor, and schedule for the appraiser to come out and appraise the property. And then once their report is done, they give it to the lender, and we will get that number will circulate of what it appraised at. So again, that's somebody who the buyer and seller do not come in direct contact with, but it is a very important party that is involved, and they will be waiting to hear what the final result for that is, which the realtor and the lender can provide. The next two parties, the last two parties that we'll be speaking about are the attorneys, the real estate attorneys. So I know there's other states where they don't use real estate attorneys. Even in South Jersey, they don't typically use them on all the transactions. But where I work, in North Jersey, we do use real estate attorneys. We typically have them on both sides. So you have a buyer's real estate attorney representing the buyers, and a seller's real estate attorney representing the sellers. So their job is to complete the attorney review, hold on to the deposit, negotiate terms, create addendums for any changes, and a lot of things like that. So there's a lot of back and forth as the process goes on, and if anything changes, we need to make addendums and move forward. So the attorneys may have a paralegal, which might be another party that's involved. So be prepared to communicate a lot with your attorney. Maybe not a lot, but communicate when you need to with your attorney and possibly their paralegal as well, because they handle the legality of everything, and they'll be a very good resource for you to have. So again, it's important to pick a good real estate attorney as well. You don't want to pick someone who specializes in a different kind of attorney, like I don't know, personal injury or workman's comp, or I don't even know if I'm saying that right, but you want to pick an attorney who actually practices real estate so that it'll be a smooth transaction. And again, I have resources to help you find that as well. So the attorneys, similar to realtors, they will communicate to the other side of the transaction on your behalf. So again, you're directly not speaking to the buyer or seller, but your attorney or your realtor is the one doing that work for you. So that was a summary on the parties involved in a typical real estate transaction. There may be more or less parties, again, depending on what type of transaction it is, and who's involved in the deal. And again, I have to stress how very important it is to make sure that you're choosing the right people on your team. And that all begins with the realtor. If you come to me and you have your people, that's great. I can call them and talk to them for you. And if you don't have them, that's fine as well. I can give you a list of resources, point you in the right direction, and get you to the right people. So it's very important because, like I said, and I mentioned a lot, the communication is not always direct between the buyers and the sellers or any party. It's the realtors who are communicating on your behalf, or the attorneys communicating on your behalf, and then the lenders and the title company who are doing all the work behind the scenes on your behalf as well. So it's very important to work with a strong party who has the knowledge and experience to get you to the closing table as smooth as possible. And I hope that going over all of these parties involved, maybe you're more overwhelmed, I don't know, but I'm sure that it will help you at least be more prepared for who to expect. And if you're working with me as your realtor, you don't have to worry about that anyway, because anytime there's a new party involved or anytime something else is coming up, I'm letting you know before it happens so that you can be prepared. And you'll know everyone who you're working with. You'll know everyone who's contacting you, because I'm very open about that. And I like to give my clients as much knowledge as possible. So again, if you do have questions, or if you want to learn more about the title end, like I mentioned before, because I am a title agent as well, you can reach out to me directly, send a text or a call, 201-456-1842. Shoot me an email at amanda@tolvecloses.com, or you can click on take a picture of, I should say, the barcode there and set up an appointment that way. Let me just see. Phil, did you have any questions?
I always have questions. Should have known. Yeah. So that is, first of all, I've got to compliment you on the presentation. It is fantastic. It was fantastic. So thank you so much for that. But okay, so I'm looking through all of this and I'm like, wow, I didn't realize that there's so many people involved in getting a house closed. I'm like, wow. I mean, I'm wondering how many more people are like just kind of like stuck behind the scenes trying to make all of this happen. But I appreciate you kind of like giving some exposure to all of this. Now, let me ask you, right? For that person that's trying to sell their house by themselves, they don't have an agent, they don't have a realtor. What does this look like to them? Like getting to closing and...
Well, that's part of the problem with selling it on your own is you're going to be super overwhelmed. I mean, you don't know all that's involved. And especially if then, some people, if they're not selling it on their own, it means they're trying to save a penny here and there. That means they're probably not going to hire an attorney. So then they're really not going to have anyone guiding the transaction. So like maybe if you're buying, selling to a family member, but even then I suggest no, because you don't want any family wars, But
and that does happen. I mean, we can't even pretend. I think that sometimes with family, it can get even more complicated.
Right. And I have a lot of transactions where they'll come without the attorney and the realtor, and just as a title agent, I'll represent them on their family transaction, which works out a lot of the times because at least you still need a title company to close. So you have to have one, but it works out because, you still have that middleman there. You still have that middleman. But what happens when these sellers try to sell on their own? they're not getting it on the MLS, which is a big party that where you get it out to, everyone. That's where all the other realtors bring in their clients. They're not hosting their open houses. Maybe some of them will try to, I don't know, but you don't have that guidance, you don't,
Right.
you're not going to know what's all of these steps that I just went through and all of the other people involved. They're not going to know what's going on the buyer's end.
Right. Correct.
That deal could fall through because you didn't follow up with their mortgage commitment. You didn't see if their title binder was in because you don't even know what I'm talking about. So it's important.
It's important. You know what? Because it's like going into court to represent yourself.
Right.
And you have no legal knowledge, experience or knowledge. So you're trying to represent yourself based on what you see on on television, Law and Order, and you try to catch up on your monk and make sure you got all your legalese right. But even television throws you off. So let's not try to represent ourselves in things that we're not.
It's not worth it, and especially in today's market where you can figure out the numbers, where it'll be cut. Your realtor fees will be covered when you're selling your home in the price. So it's just not worth it trying to do it on your own, and then it sits there, and then you have all these people calling you directly. Again, you don't want to be the direct contact. You want to give that job to the professional. So
absolutely.
They can, get you the best client the quickest.
I was looking at all the people that your realtor connects with without you being involved. Like you were talking about the inspector, the title insurance company, and even in some cases, the real estate attorney, where you're kind of going back and forth with paperwork.
So with all of the parties, those parties, as your realtor, I'm the one who's in contact with them, mostly. But the inspector, that is somebody that the client gets to see and talk to.
Okay, got you. Because they hire the inspector.
Right. I mean, they hire all these people. Some people come with their people ready to go. And then, like I said, I'll call them and I'll have a conversation with them, make sure we're on the same page and everything, because I like to be in complete communication. But if they don't, then, I have the tons of resources where I can give them, they can call around and pick who they want to work with as well.
Okay. I would say this, as a realtor, right? What are some of the roadblocks and with each of these connections? Because we're talking about a human element here. So what are some of the roadblocks you hit, like dealing with lenders, and what are some of the roadblocks you hit when you're dealing with the attorneys and things like that? What are some of the things that come up? You've been doing closings for years, so what are some of the things that come up on each of these different categories?
So as far as like dealing with each different parties, communication is always a big thing. That's why I keep saying how important it is to make sure you choose the right people you're working with, because you'll have some parties that will just not respond and we have timelines for things, so we have to keep it moving. And I'm very impatient. So I need things now. So that's
yesterday.
An issue. I mean, with the attorneys, there's not really an issue. I would say the only thing that is lack of communication that comes up often, or a lot of times, I don't know why, but on the seller's end, they'll wait until the last minute to get everything prepared. And then we're rushing to get all the sales docs prepared. And, you have to get an original sales docs at the closing table in order to fund. So if they didn't get those documents to you beforehand and you're sitting there waiting for them at the table, there's a chance they might not get there. And then the whole file can't fund. That's one thing that comes up more than often. I don't know why. I guess they just wait. So easily avoided. With the lenders, it's, I don't want to point fingers and say it's them all the time, because a lot of times maybe they're requesting documents that the client is not getting to them, which again is why I want to be involved in that, because then I can tell my client, well, this is what we're still looking for. But I also have, a lender now who's still waiting for employment verification from the guy's job. So it's holding up everything else. And it's, it's delaying the appraiser going out, and which I think we finally got out this week, but it delays things. So there's steps, there's layers. And if you don't do the one thing, you can't get to the next.
Right. So it can be like a domino effect Like, you know,
Right.
we're waiting for this paperwork.
Right. And then even the title, like if they're waiting for the title binder, the lender's waiting for the
Mhm.
title binder to finish, you know, doing the mortgage commitment. Like it's all that with between the lender and the title company, everything has to be done in order and it has to go smoothly. The attorneys really don't have that same kind of layers of timelines. They're just involved in, you know, making sure everything goes smoothly. And if there's changes, they have to make addendums and things like that.
Okay, yeah. I mean, that's my mind is just kind of like going tilt, tilt, tilt,
Yeah,
tilt.
well, that's why you have a realtor, because I have to do these things for you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you for taking care of all of that stuff. So my last thing is based on closings, because I know that that's a specialty that you've been doing. And to my understanding, a title company is like almost like an attorney
Right.
in their own sense, right? You
Mhm.
have to kind of like know, you do the digging basically on the house, right? If it has a lien on it or anything like that, you guys are the ones that discover. Tell me a little bit, like
So the title
what is
company,
that?
there's always been a title company. Like you have to have the title company if you're buying a house with a loan. Buying cash,
Mhm,
different story, but let's stick to the basic. You're buying a house with a loan,
mhm,
you need a title company. So years ago, it used to be that the attorney was the settlement agent, which means that they prepared the numbers and all of the money was given to them and they dispersed it through their, you know, attorney account.
mhm. Right.
But then when all that crazy stuff happened in 2007,
Mhm.
they now require title companies to be the settlement agent. So now
Okay,
we
got you.
do so now we do the searches, you know, we run the search, we build a title report that shows anything that came up on the property and the people to make sure everybody's clear. But then we also act as settlement agent. So we're also putting together all the final numbers with the lender and all the other parties, the attorney fees and all of that. We get all of that stuff together and then the money goes through our account and we have to finalize everything and everything has to balance out zero. So
Got you.
we do two things. We do title searches and then we act as settlement agent. And then I also go out and so I'm a title agent. Um, so I work with a lot of real estate attorneys, lenders, and then clients directly as well. And
Mhm.
then I go and I do the actual closing for my clients as well, which is great because instead of handing them off to someone else, you know, as the realtor too, like they still have me there. So I can go through all the paperwork with them, go through their numbers and make sure. But I usually do that before, you know, go through the numbers before that anyway. So they're prepared. But if it's a
Mhm.
client that I didn't get the opportunity to do that with, I get to do everything with them at the closing too.
I am officially impressed. I am. I am totally and officially impressed. Amanda, I don't, I'm like, I don't think I could do. I mean, I could possibly, but what you're talking about right now, that is a ton of stuff. And
Lot.
I'm glad that these things are in place because you have somebody that can go through it, and you have all that experience as well. That's why I love having you on in our network, is because you carry such weight as far as experience goes and knowledge. So I appreciate you for that.
Yeah, I think really
And
being able to explain every part of the transaction. Like I'm not going to say that I know more than lenders do about lending. I know the basics, you know, but I can easily, you know, have the resources to get your answers too. But I think it really helps because, like I said in the beginning, it gets overwhelming, like the amount of parties involved for people, and like you have different people reaching out to you. Like you'll have like 5 or 6 people reaching out from you from a lender, and it's like, what, you know, what's going on? And then the title company, you know, and like then you know whatever else. So it's important to be prepared for that and
mm,
have somebody like myself to guide you through it so it's less overwhelming.
absolutely, absolutely. You got better things to do than to become a professional realtor overnight.
Exactly. Let me hang out with you. And
Exactly.
you have to make money because you're buying a house. So you work. I'll do my
Please go
job
to work.
and we'll meet you at the closing
Exactly.
table.
Yeah, let's just make this easy and just kind of like give it over to
Honestly, it
a
is easier too
professional.
when they back off and let us do our jobs
Mhm.
and then, you know,
Absolutely.
reach out when it's necessary. And it's just, you know,
Absolutely. Don't be that guy. Don't be that girl.
Don't be that guy.
just just give it over to the professional. Let them do what
Exactly.
they do best. You know, your life will be easier. But I really thank you for answering my questions, Amanda. And of course, everybody that's watching, you can see her number is at the bottom of the screen, as well as you can scan the QR code that's in the corner of her screen and get some set up an appointment with her so you can talk a little bit more about your real estate needs. Thank you so much again, Amanda, and we will see you guys next week,
Great.
right? Yeah,
I also
next
want
week.
to mention too, if anybody has any topics that they would like to hear more about, to drop it in the comments, and then I haven't picked a topic for next week yet, so
Okay, they can put it in the
they can put it in the scan code.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, put it in the scan code too, and give us some ideas as well. So yeah, that's a great idea. Thanks, Amanda. All
All
right,
right.
everybody, we'll see you again in a few. What's coming up next? Whitney Love is coming up next, and of course she has a wonderful guest that's going to be with her, so we look forward to that. All right, take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks for joining.